Hi, friends. Thank you for joining me on this episode of the SCAR Initiative. I'm so excited to have Stefanie with us. So I have met Stefanie through some various pageant work. So she's a fellow Sister Queen. I'm very thrilled that Stefanie has come to tell her story today. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Stefanie to introduce herself, and then we'll get right into your story.
Hey, well, I'm so excited to be here with you today and to be a part of this amazing project that you have going on. So yeah, my name is Stefanie Hicks East. I currently live in Alabama. I currently work as a college professor teaching journalism and communication studies at a local university. I started doing that a few years ago after I left the news business. I was on the news for about 20 years, which is part of my story that will go along with that. But now I have a wonderful husband and 2 stepkids, and I'm just really excited to be here and to be a part of, like I said, your amazing project that you're working on.
Thank you. Thank you. You definitely have the news anchor personality, just that warm, that warm look about you. I'm like, yes, I could be friends with her if I ever met her outside of TV. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Stefanie, for your introduction. So let's talk a little bit about your SCAR story that you've chosen to highlight. Can you tell us a little bit about how the SCAR occurred, the significance of it to you, and feel free to go in depth or as neutral as you'd like to with your story.
Yeah, so I'll do that. I will tell you, part of it is really personal, and I hate to say embarrassing, but it's very personal. And like I said, part of it did have to do with me being in the news. I was married for 13 years to a fellow news anchor. So people knew us in this area, being in a small community, we couldn't go anywhere without people saying, oh my gosh, I watch you on the news all the time,
Right.
and I love watching you. I see you every day. And, like they are your friends. And so I loved it. I loved my job so very, very much. In saying that, towards the end of our marriage, some things happened that my ex-husband did that were very, very personal and led to our divorce. And while I know some people may say, well, yes, divorce is a scar, but what makes yours, any worse than anybody else's is mine happened in the public eye. It's hard to go through a divorce, but it's hard to go through a divorce when you have thousands of eyes on you as well. And so, for instance, during this really, really tough time, I was lucky enough to be picked to be on the cover of one of the local magazines. And it was around that time that I had finally decided to stop wearing my wedding rings. And it was a conscious decision because being on air every night, I knew that if I didn't have it on, people would send me emails or, ask about it. And so I wore my wedding ring for a long time, even after things were happening, because I knew that would raise questions. However, I knew when they were taking my picture for this magazine that, I didn't want that on my hand, because I knew that I would live with that magazine for a long time. I'd be showing it to people for years and years. And so sure enough, just like I thought, here comes the magazine, and it's out in stands around the area. And I got tons of emails. Why aren't you wearing your wedding ring on the magazine? And so it was like, it was in the public eye. So I'm trying to celebrate being, who I am and getting this high honor, but yet it's thrown in my face of, what's going on in your personal life.
Yeah.
And there were days, because this was such a public thing, and what my husband had done was a public thing, that I literally would lay, when I say on the floor, I couldn't get off the floor. I mean, I couldn't get off the floor until it was time to go to work. And if it was not for this amazing counselor that I had, I honestly don't know if I would be sitting here today, because like I said, it was in such the public setting. There were things written on blogs. There was even a news article written about some things that had happened with the divorce. And so I was embarrassed to go, even though it wasn't me, I was embarrassed to go out even to the grocery store, because I thought, are people looking at me? And one night I was sitting on the set And so anyway, at home, I'm falling apart on the inside at home,
Yeah.
but I know that I have to show an image to the people watching me of, somebody who has it together. And so I would sit on the set and I became a different person. And it kind of goes along with the SCAR initiative. We know that people are fighting things, and I had to forcibly put on a face when I was on camera. And one day I was sitting on the set, falling apart on the inside, but doing the news like the news lady does.
Yeah.
And a person that I considered a very good friend was also part of the news team. And it was when all of this was happening. And it was during a commercial break, I felt my phone go off, and it was the fellow person of the news team who was texting somebody saying, and it said something to the effect of, "Oh my gosh, did you hear about Stefanie and her husband? I heard blah, 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 blah," and goes into all this stuff. And I felt my phone buzz, and then I heard her gasp, and I heard her go, and she looked over, and I had to come back on camera. I mean, like, I was devastated. This was a person I considered a friend, and I knew that she had made a mistake and texted me instead of whoever she was texting. And I heard her gasp, and we had to go through the show. But what I had to do was I had to suck it all up. Inside, I was falling apart and my heart was breaking. But when it came back, that camera came back on me, I had to act like everything was fine. And she came out after the newscast and apologized and just kept saying, "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." And I finally did forgive her. It took a while, but just to have that happen and have that happen to you, but knowing 30 seconds later, you had to act like you were okay. It was hard. It was hard for my psyche. It was hard emotionally, just because I couldn't grieve the way I needed to grieve. Because like I said, I had to put on this public face. And I honestly, like I said, if it wasn't for the counselor that I had that I could go to and just truly talk about everything that had happened, I honestly don't know, what I would have done, or it was tough. I feel like I rambled, but that's some of the background of it.
Oh, it's a really fascinating story to know, because so many of us, and this is me being on the outside as somebody who has watched the news. You don't see what happens when that camera goes to commercial. You don't see what happens when that news anchor goes home. And so to us as the public, we see our newscasters, whoever it may be, as these really cool people who are broadcast into our living room into thousands of homes. And they're these great figures that are on a pedestal because you're delivering something important for other people to know, but nobody's knowing about something important that's going on with you. And the fact that you had to put on a face like nothing was going on, nothing was happening, and you didn't get that chance to grieve, speaks volumes about the humanism that we all are. It doesn't matter what our profession is. That is so incredible. Wow. So how were you able to handle that during that break? What did you do?
I mean, I just had to bury it because I couldn't just get up off the set and walk away. I couldn't cry, of course I couldn't cry on camera, but that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
I mean, I literally just had to take those emotions, put it in a box. And when that red light came on, act like everything was okay. And that's tough. And I think that makes it even more emotionally draining than it would be. Yes. I mean, like I said, I'm not diminishing anybody else's, if they have gone through a similar thing, but to know that you have to just literally flip that switch. Because literally when the switch just flipped and that red light came on, you had to act like everything was okay, and it wasn't okay. And that's all I could really do was just compartmentalize it. But it was so draining to have to be a public figure with a public pain.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was really tough.
And how long from the time that the separation was initiated to the divorce, how long of a time span was that?
So it was May of 2014 that I discovered things were happening, and we signed our papers in July, but I don't think anything was finalized until about November. Another tough thing that happened is we worked together for a couple of years after that, because we needed our jobs, and it's not easy to just go out into the, TV world in our business and just get another job.
Right.
So I had to work alongside him for a long time. And another thing that had happened, it was probably a few months after everything had gone down, and the way things were set up, if it was set up for a 2-person show, if the cameras were set up, it could not be automatically switched to a 1-person show right before the newscast came on, because it's all programmed in. And so my co-anchor, who did know what was going on, because we were good friends and he knew some things, one day he came up to me about 5 minutes before the show and he said, "I have an emergency at home. I am so sorry. He's going to have to co-anchor with you. I'm so, so sorry." And he was apologizing. And so once again, right before that camera came on, I had to go, oh my gosh, I'm about to sit next to this person for the next 30 minutes and act like everything's okay. And I almost am glad it happened that way, because I think if I'd had time to process it, I would have felt emotions that wouldn't have allowed me to go through the show. But instead, once again, I had no time to make a decision. I had to just take those emotions and put it in that box and set it aside. But the funny thing is, my friend texted me during the show and I hadn't had, a chance to tell anybody, because it was literally right before the show. And she texted me during the commercial break and she said, "You guys should have tweeted out that the divorced couple was anchoring. Your ratings would have gone up." So at least she made me laugh, at least she made me laugh during the commercial break. But it was just, once again, of having to, I guess, just take those emotions and pretend like they weren't there, even though they were there. And so I guess that kind of goes along with like what you've said, is so many things happen on the inside that people don't see. But on the outside, everything looked okay. Everything was in this nice box and I had my makeup on and smiling on air, but inside things were just falling apart.
Gosh, and I'm sure it would have been such a relief to just say, you know what, people at home, I am a mess. I'm a wreck. I just can't do this. I hope that you all understand. Unfortunately, I don't think that's a part of your career or profession.
Now, like I said, I needed my job, so I couldn't do that. But yeah, but again, and people would ask. I mean, people asked questions, and then you hear, so-and-so said this and so-and-so said that, which everybody has to go through, especially when you live in a small town. But still, like I said, there were things written on blogs, there was even a news article, and just to have that broadcast out to the public was really tough.
I can imagine. I mean, we see it every day with celebrity magazines talking about so-and-so's relationship and just the rumors that are spewing around. And to know that on some level you experience that, because while it may not have been worldwide like some, the fact that it was worldwide in your world and everybody knew it. And that was hard, because people have an expectation of what you should look like versus what he should have been doing and what you should have been doing together. I mean, everybody has their own opinion about it, and you still haven't grieved. So what were you able to do, I guess, to really cope with that?
So going back to what you just said, I think about it in that way, because I am not famous by any stretch of the imagination, but in my little 10-county area, I was famous.
Yeah, of course.
I have told people that. I said, it is kind of like a very tiny scale of what celebrities go through. Again, I am nothing like that, but in my little area, it was like that.
Right.
So I can't even imagine what it is for somebody on that scope to have to go through. But what I did, the funny thing is throughout my marriage, I never really had any close girlfriends, because I did not, because of some of the issues that we had been through, I was never comfortable being away or leaving him at home and things like that. But for some reason, when I went through my divorce, I had a group of girlfriends who came together, and they were my rock. And when I got remarried, I told my husband, I will never not have these girlfriends again, because they were there for me when I needed it the most. And I think that if it wasn't for them, in addition to my counselor, I don't know if I would have made it through. And then it just so happens one of the girls said, are you ready to date? Because I have a friend that I think you should meet. And I said, no, I am not ready to date at all. And she happened to mention the same thing to him. And he had said, no, I am not ready to date at all. Well, it turns out we met and it was meant to be. And
Oh,
I tell him all the time that he is my reward for what I went through.
that's
He's so
amazing.
patient and so understanding. And when I have bad thoughts pop in my head, he understands. He says it's not easy, but he understands.
Yeah.
And, he says it's kind of like a plate. If you throw it against the wall, you can glue it back together and you can still use it, but there's still those cracks in the plate. And so he's wonderful. He is my reward, and I'm so blessed to have met him. And so, there is a happy ending, but when it was going on, it was tough.
Divorce is tough. It's extremely tough. I've been through one myself, and so I can certainly empathize with those emotions. And I am just so awed by your courage to have done that in such a huge spotlight. I mean, that is just incredible to know where you were at, what happened, and how you were able to move through it, and to have these people in your life support you in the way that you really needed it at that time. So how did these scars impact you then versus now?
Well, the funny thing is I haven't told my students all of the because like I said, some of the details of what happened, only me, my best friend, my husband, and my counselor know, because some of it was so intensely personal that I don't go into the details of it. But I have had a few students, especially this semester. I don't know what is going on this semester, but I've had several female students come to my office crying their eyes out about very, very personal things that have happened to them. And I've been able to share some of what I went through to let them know that, you see me up in front of, kind of like on the television screen, but you see me up in front of the classroom and I'm so happy, and I'm teaching you about broadcast journalism, which I absolutely love. But there was a time that I also had these emotions that you're feeling. And I've been able to use that this semester with some of my students. And so in a way, it's also turned out to be a blessing in that regard too. And I've been able to share with them how my counselor was my rock. And for a few of them, I have been able to get them meetings with our counseling service on Troy. And I feel like maybe if I hadn't opened up to them about how much that helped me, they maybe might not have taken that step to go there as well. So I've been able to use it in that regard this semester, which has been really a blessing.
It gives me chills to think that who would have imagined that the story that you experienced would be helping your students? I mean, you're not just their professor, you're also a mentor, and expressing to them it's okay to have to put on this face to do your job, but you can still be a person, a human with emotions behind the camera. And
Yeah.
you don't have to hold it all together all the time. It's okay to let it out.
Exactly. And kind of like what you mentioned at the very beginning of this, I try to preach to my students over and over again to be kind to everyone, because just as you've mentioned, we never know the battles anybody is facing.
No.
We never know whether it is the person that is super quiet in the room, or it may be the girl who is the most popular girl sitting in class. We never know what each person is going through. And so if you can't be anything else, be kind, And so I do try to tell my students that throughout my classes, because I just feel like it's so important for them to do that, not only at school, but just for the rest of their lives too.
Absolutely. Did you receive any of that kind of training in your broadcast journalism as you were coming through the ranks, or even in college?
I'm not sure, but but it was such a different world when I was in school. Now these students have to deal with so much online and so much, in cyberspace that I didn't have to deal with.
Right.
So I don't know, I can't remember if we talked about that as much in college, but I do hope at least some of it resonates with them through my classes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Good. Hey, if you're changing one life, you're making a world of difference.
Yeah.
Somebody who needs to hear that your mental health is definitely a priority and taking care of you.
Yes. I tell my students, every single student that has ever come into my office with some kind of problem, I always tell them, this is a part of your body. And if your stomach doesn't feel well, you go see somebody about it. And so if you're not feeling good, mentally or emotionally, there's no reason to not go see somebody about it. We do the same thing when we don't feel well physically.
Yeah.
We need to do the same thing when we don't feel well emotionally as well.
Amen. Amen. So what was your healing journey like with your scar story?
Um, my healing journey. It was just more of being able to talk to the counselor. She shared some things with me and some stuff that I could do at home and to remember that really, really helped me. So I would take some of what she told me, and I won't go into everything, but what she gave me to work on at home and to know that it wasn't my fault was so incredibly vital. And then to just, I think, know that when you don't feel worthy, you are. And it took me a while to realize that. It did take me a while. When I met my husband and I told him about my story, I told him, I said, I felt like a piece of gum on the bottom of somebody's shoe. And that's how I felt. And it took, it just took, I don't know, it took a lot of prayer. It took a lot of self-healing to not feel that way anymore. But there was a time that's how I equated how I felt. So it was a journey, and I don't know if I'll ever be officially healed, which is why my husband is so great and helps me when I start to regress. And he'll always say, "You're better than you were. You're better than you were." And so I think it's a journey. It is not just something that you can just flip that switch like we've talked about, and it happens. It's a journey, and who knows how long it'll take, because I know there are certain things that I still battle with, but it's okay because I have the support that I need to get there.
Yeah, and it seems like you recognize that. Some of these triggers, or you recognize that there's going to be maybe a situation that could have you feeling one way or another, but it's all about being mindful of some of these situations that come up.
Exactly. You are so right. Being aware and being cognizant helps.
Yeah, because our healing journey, I don't think it ever ends. I don't think we're ever all going to be perfect. There's no such thing as perfect. But we're never going to just be to a point where it's not going to bother us, because it's a part of something that has happened.
Yes.
That trauma is always going to be a part of us, no matter what we do.
Exactly. And you talking about nobody is perfect. And I try to tell my students that too. And I think us as adults, we know it. When you think about things like social media, we just put out there what we want people to see.
Right.
When I was going through my divorce, I didn't put things out there about some of the stuff that I was going through, but instead it's always you smiling and it's always everybody looking great.
Yeah.
But we have to remember that nobody is perfect and nobody's life is perfect, as much as we want to think that it is. And as much as it's in our face that we think everybody is, it's not.
No, there's no such thing as perfect. There's an image that people want to portray, and then there's the reality.
Yes.
And gosh, just to think, if we all put our troubles on social media just for people to be like, you know what, I can relate to that. I understand how somebody can feel this way versus trying to have this image. I mean, because we see it all the time, the perfection of filters and stuff, and it's just so unattainable.
Exactly.
Wow. Well, Stefanie, can you tell us maybe some takeaways or some lessons, a moral that you would want somebody to take from your story?
Just our overall theme of you just never know what anybody is going through on the inside, no matter what the outside looks like. Just to remember to be kind. And just to be there. If you see somebody hurting, to be there for them. Because like I said, if I hadn't had that support system that came out of the blue, you know, I feel like I almost didn't deserve, but they were there and God put them. Um, that is a funny story. Actually, this made me think about it. There is a woman who I consider my other mother. Like she adopted me. She's my other mother. I love her so much. I had not told anybody about what was going on and what I had discovered. And again, I go back to, it wasn't just like a little tiny thing. It was a massive, massive thing. And I hadn't told anybody, and I wasn't going to tell anybody. And she called me, and I didn't answer the phone because I didn't want to talk to anybody. I was bawling my eyes out. And she leaves me a message and I still have it saved on my voicemail. And she said, Stefanie, I was getting my nails done and God put your face in front of me and I dismissed it. And she said, but then he put your face in front of me again. And I just felt this overwhelming need to call you. Please call me and let me know you're okay. Tell me what's going on. I lost it. I mean, and I ended up telling her, you know, a lot of what was going on. And she had no idea. She just felt this urge to call me, and she did. And so if you have that urge that somebody needs you, yeah. I know, right? If you have that urge that somebody needs you, reach out to them because they probably do.
Wow. That, again, I got chills again. So
I still have that voicemail saved.
That is so beautiful to know that somebody else was feeling something, that intuition that we should never just bypass as nothing.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Oh, that is incredible. Wow. So how are you now with everything that you have experienced and where you're at in your life with your new husband? How are you feeling?
So, oh my gosh, it's so nice to be in a great relationship. Yeah. Not that anybody has to have that, but it's just so, after what I went through, like I said, I tell him he's my reward. I always tell him now, I just wish I had met you sooner. And he says, but if we had met sooner, it wouldn't have been the right time. You know, that was the right time for us to meet. So I'm in such a better place, but it's kind of like we've already talked about. I don't know if I'll ever officially be healed. Just like I don't know if that journey is ever over for anyone, but it is so wonderful now to we'll sit on the couch and I'm like, I don't need anything else. All I need is to just be on the couch. We're not doing anything except sitting in our pajamas watching TV, but it is the most amazing feeling to just feel secure, which is something that I didn't have for a long time.
Oh, you are definitely worthy. Everybody should feel that kind of love. And I am so thankful that you were rewarded with that. What a beautiful way of explaining how your journey has evolved and where you're at now, and knowing that it seems like it's such a sense of peace with your soul, with your mind, your body, spiritually. It all has come together for this moment to be able to share that with somebody who needs to hear your story. Yes. And that your husband has been that person meant for you at that very moment in your life when you needed it the most.
Yes, it is. And thank you for saying that. That means the world to me.
Yes, you are very welcome. Well, it has certainly been a pleasure having you on. Thank you so much for telling your story. Are there any last parting words you want to leave to the viewers?
No, just, you know what, you got this. I always tell my students, you got this. It may not seem like it right now, but just remember that. And I try to tell them, you're awesome and you're amazing, even though you may not always feel that way. Just know you got this.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Stefanie.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.